What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Jakl Den podcast. I am your host and president, Daryl Keith Hendon, a.k.a. the Fairweather Rugby Fan. Joining me from places all across the greater North Texas area are members of the Jakl Den Inner Circle, plus a special guest who will introduce himself shortly. So we'll go ahead and start it off with the introductions for everybody, and we will start with Rick. Go ahead and start us off there.
Yeah, Rick Collins, board member of the Jakl Den and one of the original co-founders. Excited to have this first round table at the end of the season with our new Jakl Den podcast. Get to know our board members here and especially get a little post view of the season and you know, what are things that we can do better as a group, as a fan group, and what we would like to see as a Jakl. The Dallas Jackals go forward into 2024. So I'm excited to be here, excited to see what topics we got.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Next, we will go to our guest within the group who's not quite a member of the board yet, but was definitely involved, and that would be Mr. James here. Why don't you introduce yourself, James?
Yeah. Hey, James. Been a rugby fan since high school. Whenever it's not local and I get a chance to watch it online, following a lot of the teams across the world. I'm super excited to see the season last year and kind of been a fanboy following around the Jakl Den for a bit at all the games and want to be more involved and learn as I go. But how can I help and what can I do and how can I support this fan group to grow and get more notoriety and bring the Jackals more success?
Right on, James. Well, welcome to the podcast. Next up, we have a gentleman known as Kenyon Thor. Why don't you introduce yourself there, Kenyon Thor?
Kenyon Thor. My name's Kibui. Been a rugby fan since the early 90s, actually 80s, because I went to an Irish Catholic school and the fathers lived and breathed God and rugby. So that was my intro to rugby. Huge fan. Excited to tear apart our second season. Look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. One of my favorite movies, and excited to be here with you folks to chat it up over the next hour or so.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Kabui. And last but not least, the tallest man, or I don't know, James might be taller, but I think he is the tallest man. Big Mike. Welcome, Big Mike.
Glad to be here. For the record, I'm about 6'5.5", so I don't know how tall James is.
He wins.
Okay.
But, unlike the rest of you gentlemen, I have not been a long-term rugby fan. My kids started playing about 6 years ago, and now it's what the family does. And so I'm a board member of the Jakl Den, and just excited to talk about where we've been, where we're going, and looking forward to growth for both the fan club and, God willing, some more wins out there on the pitch for the boys.
Jeez. Definitely. So let's go ahead and get this question session going on. The first question of the day is, what went well for the Jackals on the field this year? And we will go ahead and start with you, Rick Collins.
Yeah, I honestly didn't expect as big a turnaround in terms of the quality of play from last year. I think a lot of us expected, they would be better this year. But in entire roster turnaround, we had the entire business and a rugby ops turnaround as well, bringing in the Argies. I think it was good in a lot of ways. I think, the Americans, Canadians we had out there learned a lot from the more experienced Argies. I think we had some Argies that, and Argies we use that shortly for Argentinian. They came up, we had an Argentinian GM, entirely Argentinian coaching staff. So, of course, they brought in a bunch of, I think mostly young guys from Argentina who, trying to prove themselves, maybe make Argentina's 15 and potentially, get to Puma's level. Several of the guys have actually played Argentina 15 and Pumitas, but this is an opportunity for them to play professional rugby. Most of them at the highest level that they've played so far. I like that idea, bringing in young guys. It was good to see a couple of experienced players come in as well. I think the quality of play on the field is a step forward. We honestly could have had a close to 500 season. I really expect a 500 season next year if they not only bring back the guys that they brought in this year, but also add to that and hopefully add some experienced American Canadian accents to that group. There are several Americans overseas that I think could be coming back over. One of them already, I've been told, is going to be in Miami. Wish we had been able to bring that player into Dallas, but I think that's where they need to look. They need to go out and find some more experienced American and Canadian talent, bring them in. And I really think we're looking at a much improved team next year. The results this year weren't representative of the quality of play on the field. I really think this was a 500 team that just they lost matches on the bounce of the ball many times, and I think those are easily correctable mistakes. So I think at a 500 team is a team that can last in this league. I think if they drop back and lose some of these players, it could be disastrous. But I think if they really just kind of move forward from where we are now, add to it and build upon, then this is a much better team than this year's record represents.
All right, well, great points there. We will get to the guest of the day. James, man, what do you think went well for the Jackals on the field this year?
I'm going to have a different nickname than the guest at some point, right?
Yes.
That's permanent now.
Oh, yeah, it's going to stick. I think one of the things that Keith, that you and I talked about last season was there really is a total difference in how teams play that come from different parts of the world. So, I mean, you're a Springboks fan. I'm an All Blacks fan. There's a difference how the teams south of the equator play versus teams north of the equator. And last year we had a captain and coaching skills that came from the UK and a lot of players that came from the UK. And it was evident when they got on the field against teams like Utah, who are 80 and 90% south of the equator, going up against Austin and Houston. And there was such a difference to the gameplay that these guys from UK and Ireland just couldn't. It wasn't even a competition at some point. I think one of the big turnarounds that happened this season, and what it seemed like, it almost felt like last season, the team didn't know how to function as a unit. It seemed like it was a bunch of individuals who were trying to play. This year, it seemed like there was a lot more cohesion. It seemed like there was a lot more effort put on the fundamentals. It seemed like there was a lot more effort put on how to hold a line. I think what cost us a bit of some pain in some of those last minute points that could have put us over the edge was things like there still wasn't communication at points where it could have been. Prime example was that the first few minutes of that last game of this season was watching our two backfielders run into each other trying to catch a kicked ball. Simple communication stuff. It happens when you're out there, but this is the result of it. I think the other one, it seemed like we had mistakes when we tried the technical moves, or that you would see some of these games. Seattle's great and San Diego's great with doing this shell game with the ball, where they are able to pass it person to person so close together when they're close to the try zone that as the audience, we can't even tell who has the ball anymore because they've moved it around so fast behind their back. And it seemed like under their leg at one point. They're doing Harlem Globetrotter stuff with that ball. When we would try an around the back or a short punt through the line is when we lose it. Whereas if we had just done some fundamentals, we may have slowly gained those inches. I feel like that cost us a little bit. But what that means to me is that the basics are there. It's just the communication and the fine tuning. So I really do think next year is going to be fantastic. I think we're on track for it.
Good. Yeah, those are all good ideas there. Now we will move to Kabui. What went well for the Dallas Jackals on the field this year?
For me, as a pack guy, the biggest difference and noticeable difference is that we had a scrum that functioned. If you don't have a scrum in international rugby, you're dead. You can march all the way down the field, one small knock on. If you have a good scrum, you can put the pressure on them and then play territory, right? If you can't hold up a scrum, it's a penalty. You lose. If somebody has a cannon, you lose 40, 50, 60 meters down the field. And it's just rinse and repeat. So the biggest thing for me was we now have a pack. If they retain this pack, add 1 or 2 people in the off season, then we have a strong core of forward players who can mix it with the very best in this league. I think the most noticeable difference next to the scrummaging was the start of the breakdown. You know, they're hitting rucks hard. There's cohesion. The pillars are setting up nice. The gaps in the side are not anywhere close to the first, second, and third phase off the pillar, off breakdown. It's coming out wide. And I think that gets fixed when you have a proper captain marshaling the 10-12 channel. So I think the biggest, fantastic, number one. So biggest improvement for me is your pack play. And then I think to get to the next level, for me, you add a 10 and 12, like proper generals who can run the side and who are going to run the ball, not just kick it. And I think we're immediately a 500 side. So that's my review.
Yeah, I liked what Kabui, Kubia
The Tongan Thor, Kenyan Thor.
did near the end of the season at 12. I thought he strengthened up that position. We definitely needed that. I think you're right that especially at 10, is Elias the answer? And I think that it's a question. I don't know. You know, maybe he, makes some huge strides. He's still a young guy, but you could tell last year there was those moments at 10 that we made things happen, especially with Adrian, especially with even guys stepping in there, Pinnell stepping into the position occasionally, that experience of knowing how to play. And I think, can Martin become a guy like that? I don't know. It would be good to see them get an experienced player in there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Going back and watching that last home game, the final game of the season, we know Danny Christensen did get the fan vote for man of the match back-to-back.
Absolutely.
Personally, after watching that game, it was Kubia the whole way. That guy was carrying the ball. He was making really deep runs. He assisted on 2 of the tries. He really is a dynamic center. We just didn't get to see enough of him this year.
Yeah, cross your fingers that he comes back next year and that we get to see a full season of him, because I do think he's a very good player if he gets into this system.
Well, last but not least, in the question, what went well for the Jackals on the field? Big Mike, man. What do you think?
Initially, my first thought was the same as Kabui's. We went from having a paper mache scrum where it was, oh God, we have a scrum down on our own 5 and we're going to turn the ball over and they're going to score.
Score.
There was a point early in the season where it was our penalty on our side of the field on the 5, and we just held the scrum waiting for them to commit a penalty so we could kick easier. And so that would be number one with the bullet. The forward play was exponentially better. But number 2, which I think is equally as important, is the heart of the players on the field. There were times where it was hard to see that this was a losing team because they fought tooth and nail to the from the start of the game to the end. I think when a team's 2-0, or 0 for 2, right, and we're struggling to put wins on the board, it's really, really easy to succumb to that mindset of I just quit. I just don't want to play anymore. It's miserable, and the players never quit. They may have gone out there, got hot-headed, and made some critical mistakes, especially in that last game. But watching the players' passion and their heart was a huge highlight. It made it easier to go cheer for them, to watch how upset and how heartbroken they were over losing games. And so I think you're seeing the beginning of a winning culture with that. As Rick said, I think we could have been 500 this year pretty easily, but it didn't bounce that way. And so if we could continue to build on that forward play, add the center that you guys were talking about, maybe change the fly half out, but we have to hold on to that mindset where the team's out there just giving everything they have every match. Again, it's real easy to quit when you're not winning a whole lot. You're losing heartbreaking games. So that was a highlight for me. They came off bloodied, battered, and beaten, but it didn't seem like they'd mentally quit at all this year.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that as well. Even after the debacle at Seattle on the road, talking to the guys after the game, they weren't ready to quit. They weren't ready to give up. So, we shall see next season. So moving along to question number 2 in this podcast, and we will start and go the opposite direction this time. So Mike, you will be up first. What didn't go well?
A lot of things.
On the field this season.
A lot of things. I think the low-hanging fruit here is definitely the kicking game and the kick and chase, but I'll leave that to one of our more official rugby mindset guys. I think for me personally, it was we just didn't have enough local-born talent on the team. When we're winning 2 games, I don't see why we're not, and I'm not even just saying the DFW area, just American, Canadian, eligible players. The future of the MLR has got to be developing those homegrown players to fill those spots. And so for me, there just wasn't enough of that. It felt like Pumita's 2.0 out there. And I thought that, and here's a key example. What did go well is Danny Christensen's heart. And when that guy's motoring on the field, it pulls everyone forward because he plays so hard. I wish there were more guys out there like him. If we're gonna take an L anyways, put somebody out there with some fire. Put somebody out there who's going to drive us forward. There are guys in DFW right now. I'm not saying they're starters. I'm not saying they're superstars, but they could have made that squad. And there's certainly other guys that came available during the season. Layuta came about, and a couple others that Chicago signed midseason that could have been big-time contributors here. But we let them by, and so I don't know what the reason is behind that, but I think having more homegrown talent would have made a major difference on our side.
I definitely agree with that. Before we go to Kabui, just a quick little announcement here. Danny Christensen has agreed to an interview. It'll hopefully happen sometime this week. Very excited. He's already back in Salt Lake City, so I'm excited to do an interview with that young man. He was definitely exciting to watch on the pitch this year. Now, Kabui, what didn't go well for the Jackals on the field this year, man?
Everything that went well last season with the back line didn't go well this season. Last season, the team was so dynamic once the ball got out of the scrum half's hands. And it was quick ball. Carlsa, he can play flat, he can play deep. And Chad London, Pennell, all those guys. And last season, I remember watching several of those tries and thinking these are season of the year tries, right? Try of the season year tries. And I don't recall. I think I recall the one try that Vara scored. For me, that was the one when he cut back in off from the outside the 22 after some good interchange play. The play just wasn't as dynamic this year. I think if Ticho Elias goes and he starts playing a running game, then he has a chance of retaining his spot on the side. If he doesn't do that, it's going to be a hard sell just because your 10 controls the play. So he has to be dynamic enough to know when to pop kick, when to go kick long, and when to play it flat or when to play it deep. And I don't know if it's just the youth and he hasn't got that part of his game developed, but if he doesn't develop that, then we don't step up a notch. And if we don't get another fly half, we don't step up a notch. So for me, we weren't as dynamic out the back. Our pack stepped up, our line stepped down. We need more robust defense out on the edges. 13 is the hardest position to defend. Somebody like Rick will tell you, like 15 and 13, that channel right there is the hardest. That's where the space is. And if your 14 doesn't trust your 13, then there's going to be holes there all game. And you could see that. And so they're going to have to pick their line players early. They're going to have to work on their dynamic. They're going to have to work on their set plays. And they have to get to where they trust each other, or it's just a sieve. A good side will find holes in your back line, They'll just run those short, hard angles. The space comes if you're not together. So for me, step down in the line. That's the biggest place of opportunity for this coming off season and for next season.
Yeah.
We definitely saw those issues against Seattle. They attacked those exact spots the entire game. So definitely agree with you there, Kabui. Now, Mr. James, what was what didn't go well for the Jackals on the field this year?
I think the first one I have to point out is I think we would have done a lot better if the refs had listened to our Phil Collins' second cousin that we have on the sideline, who was explaining to them how to play the game the entire time through. If they had just taken a break and listened to this man who was explaining to them what they were missing, there would not have been nearly as many penalties given away, and we would have gotten more tries way up front.
I think the league needs to get a new TMO. I think he's right here in this group right here. Rick Collins, TMO for
that could be one of the next upgrades for the Jakl Den is we just get Rick a couple of big screens to put in the corner over there. He can sit there in his seat on his front row and watch
and be the TMO.
I thought Rick's gonna run the field. I'll do the TMO. I'm not doing any running. So let Rick do the running on the field.
Rick do this and just look over at Kabui.
Hey, I spotted stuff that they didn't spot even before. We were chatting about stuff.
Yeah,
they missed stuff all season. Like they missed. How did that referee miss the trip on? Was it the number 8 yesterday? How did he miss that trip?
A late showing.
Monty.
We have a late guest here.
There you go. Monty's in the house.
The full Monty has arrived.
Gotcha.
No, I agree with you. Even my wife next to me at the game, and she hasn't watched rugby until a couple games last season. But even she would look over and are they supposed to be doing that? Is that allowed? Are they allowed to do that? And it was stuff that, she was calling it in the ruck, in the mall, the way the tackles were going, that the refs were just closing their eyes to. But then we would get called out every single time.
Yeah,
it was brutal. But as far as what we could do, some of the things, or as far as what I think didn't go well, some of the things that kind of irked me for the season was one. I don't think we used our finishers nearly as much as we should have and could have. We have some gigantic guys on that field, and they definitely had the heart to run all 80 minutes and do all of that. But when we have these guys on the field who are putting all they have into it, by that 40 or 50 minute mark, they're exhausted, and we have guys on the line who are waiting to get in. Mm-hmm. If we had made some of those changes at more strategic points and put in that fresh blood and that fresh energy, it may have been the point to help get us past a couple of the lines sometimes. So that was frustrating to see some of these players that did so well last year sit on the bench the entire game. Another one that killed me was I feel like we had a ton of line-out mistakes. That really was really frustrating. I feel like that's one of those things that should be it should be simple, and it feels a little bit amateur at this point that we can't throw the ball straight, or that when we get it, we can't hand it down to our team. It seemed like there were plenty of times that we would end up knocking it over to the opposing team, and that kind of stuff was just frustrating as hell. And it seems like one of those that's so simple to train for and to get down. The last one for me was our kickers, whether it was conversion kicks or penalty kicks. I feel like there were so many that we lost a couple in the early season by 3 or 6 or 9 points that we easily could have made by conversion kicks or penalty kicks earlier on in the game.
We lost that entire Utah game based on somebody's foot not being able to.
Utah, we lost because we never we could never convert the whole game. So,
it wasn't even to say that the conversion kicks were from way over by the dead zone. I mean, we just slipped. That kind of stuff. It was that kind of little things that just drove me nuts. I feel like did not go well this season.
Definitely agree with that. Next up, obviously, Rick, the Jackal King Collins. What didn't go well?
Yeah, to me, it was all the technical stuff. I agree with everybody on most everything. It felt like a team that came together at the last second and was trying to put together stuff by mid-season and had the talent to win some of these games. I think early on, when you have a scrum coach as good as we had this season, that obviously made a huge difference. And then obviously bringing in players of a high level experience in scrum, and then you get a rookie flanker comes in and plays lock, and it just probably top 5, top 6 lock in the league in his first season is huge.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the little things, and I think this is kind of what everybody's mentioned is, when we need a lineout, we run the wrong lineout, right? We got to have it. We run the deep line out with a risky pass with multiple moves in between. Like, if we got to have this, we go 5 meters and we go up immediate.
Do the basics.
Just super basic stuff, very simple. Keep it simple when you absolutely have to have it. And you see what Seattle did to us this year, and I think they're the epitome of doing the right things all the time. And can you imagine if we had Clarkey as our coach? And not to say that our coaching staff this year was bad, but good Lord, what he's done over there. And now Seattle was very good to begin with, but man, I mean, just putting all the pieces together and making it all work the last couple of seasons for them. And obviously, I mean, they know what the weaknesses of the other team are, and they take advantage. And I don't know if it's just we're not quite there yet, and we've got a team that literally did come together the last minute, or if we are missing pieces. And so I'm very curious to see how next season goes. But little things like lineouts when we absolutely have to have them. And I thought if you compare this year's lineouts to last year's lineouts, we're miles ahead of where we were last year. But
oh boy,
when everything is going so much better, you expect that they're going to not make mistakes in those moments. And they're still making the mistakes in those moments. And those are the mistakes that are costing us games.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other issues, the kicking game was just atrocious this year overall. I think every piece of the kicking game, whether it was, conversions, penalties, chips, deep kicks, just every single piece of it was atrocious this year. And it has to be better next year if we expect to win matches. And honestly, I think there are a lot of matches here. I think there were 4 or 5 matches we win if we make a couple of conversions, couple of penalties, and then we just make the right decisions in the kicking game. So instead of kicking deep in certain scenarios, we're grubbering through or chipping over the top. We just didn't do a whole lot of that. But then at the end of the season, we were talking about every time they did that, it worked. And we're like, why were we doing this the whole season? Like, the decision making, I just think, especially in the kicking game, was extremely poor. So, and look, I think if we said last year, if we had this meeting last year at this roundtable, and we said, what did we do wrong? We would have said everything. And then what would we have said about trying to make it better? We would have said, I don't know. Like, honestly, we don't think the players on the field can actually do a whole lot better than they've done. We were very appreciative of the players that were out there last season, and they did their best. But honestly, there probably wasn't another level with that specific group of players. With this specific group of players, I think absolutely we should have expectations that there's another level that they can play at. And so I think, the level this year, not as good as what we wanted. Would like to see this team in the offseason getting together in October, November, and spending a few months just getting to know each other and socializing and doing some team activities and building that up into the season because they didn't get to really do that this year. And obviously this team's been a mess for several seasons, even before they started playing. So better, but little things, but they're correctable. So the question is, can this coaching staff correct it? And if they can't next year, then we're looking at a whole new system maybe 2 years from now. So I'm crossing my fingers they can correct it, bring in some more American Canadian talent. But as of right now, like it's still disappointing. I think we're all happy that the play on the field is better, but the results aren't good enough.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
I agree with you too on that whole coming together and bonding with each other. I got a chance to talk to some of the Chicago players, after that last game. And, we may be a second-year team and they're a first-year team, but a lot of stuff they were saying sounds a lot like us, where it's really hard to bring together this group of people that have really never played together and they don't know each other and try and get them to sync on the field. And I think if they spend some of that time bonding together, getting to know each other's play styles, getting to know each other well enough to trust each other, I think that's going to reflect on the field as well. And when we look at these other teams that have been in the league for several years and they've had consistent teams, those guys know each other. They have each other's backs. They know what their idiosyncrasies are. So I think that's going to come, especially next season, if we're able to maintain kind of this core group of guys that we have on the field for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of our games that we lost that were either close at some point or close at the bell came down to rookie mistakes, if you will. And that's not to say they haven't played a long time. It's anytime you play a sport like rugby, how well you know the guy next to you is the make or break moment in it. And so whether it was frustration leading to penalties or errant passes or some of those really terrible lineouts at very, very crucial points in games, I think a lot of those things can be fixed by just getting reps with their teammates and with some maturity as players. I think it's relatively a young side. And I think there's a large difference between playing in MLR than there is elsewhere. Not that it's better or worse, but stylistically, it's a different game that a lot of them have seen, where you get to play with the same guys all year long. So the more they bond, the more they mature as players, I think those games that we just fall apart at the end or fall apart at some point and come running back turn into W's pretty quickly.
I'm going to hold our lineouts accountable. I'm just going to jump in real quick. So I'm a hooker by trade, but I can play anywhere in the front row. But it's important for the hooker to make sure, even if he's not making the calls, which a lot of hookers today don't make the calls. The prop will come and run in and whisper something to him. Here's the big problem that we had all season. If our hooker's going to go to the back and he's going to throw it hard and direct as opposed to a looping pass, then you open us up for a counterattack. And I think I can't recall how many tries that they scored off those counterattacks, but if this hooker knows that his jumper is going to go up slow, they've got to get to the point where they sync up and maybe he just lobs it in. And it's unacceptable for a team to have been together for 3 or 4 months. Actually, it's more than that. And you still can't make a throw when the heat is on the line and there's points on the board. It's unforgivable. If you're in the 22 and you fluff a throw, that's points. Whether it's a penalty, there's a chance to get points off a penalty. There's a chance. And our maul is probably one of the best in the league. So if you throw that ball in, all you got to do is make the throw. And you don't have to walk up slowly. You don't have to wait for the other team to get set up. If you're in the 22, hey, we go straight to Burr, and you have 4 legitimate jumpers. You have Burr, you have Gala, you have Vara, and Conrado. All of those are legitimate jumpers. So you can put all 4 of them in the line. This team is not going to risk going to throw people up at the front and the back, because the second they do that, they have 3 people missing to counter that maul the second it hits the ground. So they have to respect it. All you have to do is get the first one right, and then they stop trying to mess with the throw. They're not going to throw someone up. And so I think Baravaje, Dewey, it's a tough place to be because you're the one throwing, but you have to take the ownership. And if your calls are not coming right from your pack, you take ownership and say, hey, I'm going to run these calls. The calls are made before I even walk up to the throw.
I'll say this. We had 3 hookers. We had Connor Robinson, the kid from Boston. We had Dewey, who, compared to last year, not even the same player. And then they brought in Baravale from the URC. He's like a 60-plus cap veteran in the URC. I kind of expected, I guess, when Baravale came in, that he was going to be completely it. And honestly, there were times where Dewey played better than him and Robinson played better than him. And it was kind of like, dude, you're supposed to be the 60-plus cap veteran. You're supposed to be the gel at hooker for this team, and it just didn't seem like that at times.
If they couldn't make it work, go bring Frings back or go get Colin Yerian from the Reds. Yerian's basically another flanker who can throw. And I'm not a Reds fan. I don't like the Reds, but you know what? If you can't throw the ball, you might as well have another flank on the side. I'm just saying.
Yeah. All right. With the next question, we will start with the tardy student here. Monty, what went well for the Jackals organization? We're not talking about the field, but the organization as a whole for what you saw.
As an organization, I think overall seeing the front office come together throughout the season was nice. Seeing the season ticket holders kind of get their own people to work with were good. I think having a good coaching staff this year, that had a lot of experience was very beneficial for us. So overall, I saw a lot of improvements organizationally, I think, for the team.
Right on. Mr. Kabui, what do you think went well for the organization this year?
I think their willingness to listen after there was no interaction last season. I think allowing us to have those, what do you call them? I've lost it. The tailgates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Allowing us to have the tailgates and, not restricting us, and everybody behaved themselves, so they kind of just let us be. They didn't have to micromanage us. And I mean, we're adults, and everybody, just about all the fans who came out, everybody was respectful, cleaned up after themselves. And I'm looking forward to seeing them interact more with the youth next year. I'm not on the youth side in coaching or anything, so I'll let Mike and the team speak on that. But I just, their willingness to listen, whether they could deliver or not, but sincerely look like they want to do something. That's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
Mr. King, what do you think went well for the organization this year?
I'll build off of what Kabui started. I think, let's just put it out there, there's some significant relationship issues between the Jackals as an organization due to some history that is outside of the current ownership and management. That's outside of their hands. But I think this year, especially as the season progressed, the ownership and the management recognized, we have to start doing some things differently. And we have to start rebuilding some bridges that were completely torn asunder in the past. I think some of that's because they've actually sat down and listened to the fans and to us as the Jakl Den. But it was a benefit to see hands-on ownership, hands-on management saying, we got to fix these things. We have to fix the relationship with the local clubs, which is going to be an uphill climb both on the adult and the youth side, but also to just listen to feedback, period, about scheduling. I won't put anyone's business out there, but I had a interaction with someone from the brass, so to speak, about youth stuff, and they were all ears. They had recognized that there are some pretty hefty issues there, and they want good feedback and they want good interaction. So that was a big positive. I think the other big positive was they're willing to staff the organization appropriately. Last year, if you needed anything from tickets to parking to social media to you name it, you're calling like Kelsey, who did a fantastic job, and we all wish she was still on board, but she was a one-man show. Whereas this year, they've at least got some people in tickets and sales and someone doing social media and someone at least attempting to do all these things right and not just trying to run this thing understaffed. And so they seem to be willing to make the investment to build the infrastructure needed to really run a professional sports organization. Now, time will tell whether they're going to be able to pull it off or how successful they'll be, but them at least coming to the table and saying, hey, we're willing to do this. We're willing to listen. We're willing to put boots on the ground for this stuff has been big. I think also them just being willing to start an academy is a huge deal. It's going to be rocky. We all know that. But them starting with, I think, what's going to be a U23, U24 and going down is going to be very beneficial. So those are really big positive steps. Even their initial hire for president, they went and headhunted somebody who's got experience in the NHL. Steve's no longer with the club, but they're at least swinging for the fence on some of these things. We'll see if they can actually hit some home runs next year.
One of the things, too, I think I'd like to add on to that is the fact that they did staff really well, and where they needed help, seeing the ownership step in and fill some of those roles was really good, because it shows that they want to have their hands dirty. They want to make this thing successful. They're not just going to hang it out there to kind of see if it works or not. They're going to get in there and do the work they need to do as well, even if it's just the grunt work.
I agree with that 100%. We definitely saw Rod and John definitely jump in there at the end of the season and start being a little bit more hands-on as ownership, and I appreciated the heck out of it. Mr. James, I guess not so much involved in the inner meetings with the organization, but you as somebody that wasn't, did you see anything positive as far as the organization went as a whole? Did you see any differences from your side of it?
Absolutely. I mean, from someone that was kind of on the tail end or the receiving end of all the stuff, all the effort that you guys put in there with the organization from the beginning. I mean, I remember as far back as when you talk about them reaching out, the asks for improvement and whatnot, the voice of the fans. It was really impressive at the beginning of this season that they reached out to the Den and wanted to have a sit down with the Den and management to say, how can we make the experience better? I mean, to think that only that in just the second season they cared that much at the beginning to say, how can we improve this, and what recommendations do you guys have? I think one of the biggest improvements that we saw over the first season on the organizational side was an announcer. Getting Lawrence up there as an announcer was fantastic. Last year, it seemed like the only thing he knew how to do was press play on a Leonard Skinner CD over and over and over again. Now, I love Leonard Skinner, but I mean, like, I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I wanted to know why there were refs going out, what was being called, what the hand signals meant, what was happening. And all we got was, like every now and then, like a Cyndi Lauper 30-second and then back to play. But to have Lawrence out there this time actually, here's the call, here's what's going on, here's the player, here's what's happening. And to have him as a part of the Den and on the social medias outside of the organization, to where the Den or the fan base can reach out, hey, have you thought about this? What about this? What can we do this? It's just excellent to have that voice right there. Another one, I think some of the community outreach stuff that happened this year, I know there was a start last year, but because of the event that caused the injuries, the bridge collapsing or something like that about midway through the season or beginning of the season, I think that put a stop to a lot of the outreach stuff last year. But this year, there wasn't as much, but you still saw, the kit reveal, the academy, the combine, things like that were kicking off. It's good to see that stuff starting happening. I think that this new group of coaches, they're fantastic. They're working well. And I think the humility behind all the upper management is really, really impressive and cool. I mean, it was one thing to be able to grab Rod and ask him to sign my Jakl ball because I wanted the management and the coach's signatures too. It was another to walk past him in Lot E at the end of the night as he was getting in his car and wave, hey, thanks, boss. Have a good night. Have a good summer. See you next season. Blah blah blah. And realize, like, this dude paid $20 to park in the exact same lot that we did.
Yeah, that's huge.
Maybe
like
he's not behind a gated lot that nobody else.
Yeah.
Rod and John definitely got down and lifted. They rolled their sleeves up, and I would appreciate. I thank John personally that, like, going out and running the merch booth, like that says a lot. Because a lot of owners won't do that kind of thing.
His daughter was out there helping him. His wife and I think his other daughter were out there as well doing stuff. But I know Peyton helped check me out on several purchases, and I don't know, she's like 16, 17 years old.
She even did some modeling work she wasn't too proud of with the bucket hat, but
yeah.
Well, I mean, I walked the crosswalk out of the exit right next to Sodini. I mean, it's like these guys aren't running underground. I mean, they're like, there is an underground tunnel that goes over where they park. Like, they're not hiding. You know, I mean, it was really cool to see kind of that humility of, like, they were willing to have a conversation. I mean, I'm not fluent in the languages that go on there with a lot of that, but I mean, it was cool to have them right there if you could have. That kind of stuff I'm happy to see, and I hope there's more of it.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on with Lawrence too. I think it was great that he was seeking out feedback from us on Facebook, but also
yeah,
when
definitely.
he was doing, you can't do that. I talked to him the next to last game, and I said, "Man, you're doing that way too fast. We want to chant along with you, slow it down a little bit if you would." And he's like, "Okay, that's cool." So that last game, he slowed it down. We were starting to chant it in the stands, and then when I was up in the Jack Daniels Club post game, he like grabbed me and he said, "Hey, did I do a better job with that? Did you like the way that worked?" And I was like, "Yes, that was perfect." But it was great that, he took that constructive criticism, he worked with it, and then he followed up to see, "Hey, how am I doing?" And I think he's doing a great job up there. I did talk to him about the music a little bit, and he's like, "That's out of my hands. We got a rotating music guy." So what I hope to see next season is I hope we can get like a good permanent music person in there.
Groogs, we got to suck this guy in. I handed over the shirt and the scarf to him. He's a music guy. He's a producer guy, but he's been a music guy for several of the professional teams around here. We got to suck him in, get him up there with Lawrence, and I mean, dynamic duo right there. I think it would be great.
I think so too, and I think that's something else that went really well this season was getting 97.1 The Freak out there, getting them at the game, getting them some exposure to it, and then starting to have some of our people on their station. And I think that'd be a great opportunity for the Jackals to maybe partner with them and make them like the official station of the Jackals and start getting something weekly out there, having somebody go on and talk about the game.
It's funny. I think there might be some people who could do like a weekend show on their channel.
That'd be dope. Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But, last but not least,
I'm told I have a face for radio, so maybe.
The inside man, Rick Collins.
Yeah.
So what went well for the organization this year?
I think a lot of the stuff everybody's already mentioned, but I was privy to a meeting that I think there were 6 people privy to this meeting, and I was actually asked to put it together. He is putting things into our hands to be able to assist them. So I do like that because I think there's an understanding that they don't know the community, that we know the community, and that they're better off allowing us to help promote the community with them, give them ideas about, how to better communicate and connect with the local rugby community. So I loved having that opportunity. And one of the things that came out was the GM is really powerful in terms of what they would. And this makes sense because on the business side, they don't really have any rugby people. Rod's doing his best, and I think he does enjoy the sport, but it's not his number one passion. But it's great to see him, really active out there and putting these things together. The GM does want to be more active in the community, and part of what this year for him and I think his group, I don't necessarily know who exactly that is, but other people that are part of that Argentinian ownership group was putting a plan together to build off of this season. And for example, the combines, which they're going to do another one, at least one more before the fall. And then putting together a development side, dev squad, U23, whatever we want to call it, squad together for the fall is in place. And I think, there's going to be more going forward. I think part of it was they didn't want to try and spread themselves too thin this year. So I thought in terms of what I've heard and everything has been really good. In terms of what I've seen with the ownership group towards the end of the season, when Steve was like go or left, was really good. I'm concerned. Can they continue that into next season? Are they going to continue without a president of the club going into next season? That's up in the air. But without a president for half the season, I thought they pulled together. They did a really good job. Very commendable job. And I think that the GM that's in place, at least based on what he said and how I've experienced him, is that he really wants to do right by the local community. And so I can't fault him for that. we can fault him in a couple of years if nothing has progressed on that side. But as of right now, they're saying the right things and doing the right things. And after what happened last year, I think that's very appreciated by at least us. Obviously, the rugby community as a whole doesn't completely appreciate it, which, and look, I understand, especially with the Reds. In some cases, I completely understand how, they had this sort of relationship in place. I even brought it up to Steve. He had no idea that relationship even had existed. Rod had no idea that relationship had existed, right? So part of this was we had almost a complete time box from last year and this year. And so, there's a lot of cleanup they've got to do before they can actually get a working relationship with the rugby community locally. But I think they're making the right steps. At least they're saying the right things to move towards that. So crossing fingers that continues.
Well, I think we have to have proper expectations too. Like, think about this. Hey, we need you to come in after what was a disastrous season. And that's not to say the people last year didn't try, but injuries that no one could have predicted, coaches having visa problems, being short-staffed. You guys have to come and clean all this up. And then we also, as a fan base, are screaming at you because you don't have your youth program in order, or we're mad because we didn't like that the deal that was in place fell through. When priority number one for them, especially on the rugby side, needs to be winning rugby games. And it's completely unrealistic to expect, hey, come in after a disastrous season, and then we need you to not just take care of 1, 2, 3, but we need 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 perfect right now. And so I'm really looking forward to see how they address it. And I completely agree with you, Rick. In 2 or 3 years, if it's not right, we have a lot of room to bellyache and be upset. But as of right now, at least let the club get their feet underneath them, make the changes that they've made, make future changes they need to make, and then we'll circle back around and see what this academy looks like, what a lot of other things look like. But they got to be given time to correct issues and be given the benefit of the doubt.
A lot of that too, just overall with people comparing us to 3, 4, 5-year-old teams.
Yeah.
And
why aren't we like Houston?
Look, if they can do it, why can't we? Well, the reason we can't is because we're a first-year, second-year team, So it's unfair of us as fans to say, hey, or even other youth organizations saying, hey, how come you're not doing what X team is doing that's been around for 5 years, right? We need time to do that. So I agree. If we're not there in 3, 4 years, we got some issues, but I think we should see some improvement next year on a lot of these relationships. And hopefully year 3, if we count next year's year 2, year 3, it's up and running like clockwork, and we're going to be good to go from that point on.
Yeah, I agree.
Great answers with everybody. Well, we're going to take a short break here, guys, and we'll be right back after this.
Hey, guys, this is Rick Collins from the Jakl Den. Just wanted to let you know we still have these beautiful scarves available. We will be selling these all summer and into next year. As long as we got them, we'll be selling them. They are available via myself. You can either email me at collins.richardw@gmail.com, or you can text me at 214-498-8532. We get set up payment for it. Taking electronic payments. We can figure out other plans if necessary. And you can pick them up for free, or we can send them to you at cost, obviously. But they start at $15, and then we just add that shipping cost on. So if you want to get one of these beautiful ones for next year, or to wear this off season, probably in the winter when it gets a little chilly, give me a shout and we'll get you taken care of. Thanks.
We're back, folks. Hopefully the commercial made you do what we all went and did. So moving on to the next question in our roundtable discussion here. We asked what went well. Now we're going to ask what didn't go well for the organization. Not the play on the field, but just the front office and kind of the whole operation side of it. And with that, we will start with who we ended with. We will start with Rick Collins. What didn't go well for the organization?
Yeah, I think I have very strong opinions on this because I got very close interior vision of what.
Everybody crack a beer. It's going to be a minute.
the whole Steve Violetta deal, if anybody doesn't know that's a Jackals fan, he was the president of the business side. He either left or I know what happened, but I'm not supposed to talk about it. It's not been released by the team. Or was relieved of. He was either released or he left the team mid-season. I think even a little bit before mid-season. And we found out about a week later, and we were told basically that a certain member of the ownership group would be kind of filling in for him. Not necessarily an interim president, but we saw, as we talked about here a few minutes ago, that the ownership group, several of members of the minority part of that, were very active at the end of the season, which was great to see. But that also meant that the president of the club was not doing his job, or not to the level that was required for the team to progress from a business perspective. I don't necessarily think that we went down in terms of attendance. I would say the attendance was very similar to last year, maybe a little bit better towards the very end of the season with the last few matches at home. And I think that away travel for fans was better. I think there were more fans at away matches this year than last year. But I think that there were a lot of community aspects, which we've discussed already, and a lot of social media advertising marketing aspects that were significantly downgraded from last year. And not to throw shade at anybody who was working in that area this year, but I think there was not time, money, and thought put into it. And when all of us, it's a small league, we're all following the other team, see what they're doing. And when we see what they're doing, and there's no secrets about what they're doing, they're taking advantage of the free marketing that's available to them, using the players and staff to market the team, market products. And this club isn't doing that. That's a huge disappointment. There's so many areas where, as we're going through the season, we're going, man, well, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? They could be out there handing out free tickets for Rangers fans as they leave their games. Why aren't we doing that? That's free. That's no cost to the team, right? We've got plenty of tickets to sell.
It's a tax write-off.
Exactly. Go out and hand those damn tickets out. Get more seats. Tell
them, Monty.
Shoot, I love that they're really trying and they want to push forward, and they've got great ideas about what this organization, what this club can be in the future. But there's so many holes that have to be filled for next year. They have to. This isn't we would like them to do this, like what we would like them to do with the team, right? There are so many things that hold back the team. Financially, personnel-wise, things like that. That's understandable. But on a business side, there's so many things they're not acceptable, that we've got to be doing better next year. And I think hopefully the end of this year tells them we do need to do these things. Otherwise, we're going to have meetings where we tell them we've got to be doing these things. It's just, I think that was hugely disappointing this year, that they had an entire season. They had Kelsey doing a great job with social media stuff, but there were still holes. And I thought after a season of, this is very obvious that we're missing out on these opportunities, that would get fixed this year. But with the new management group and everything, I can understand that they might miss out on a few things. Most of the business side, as far as ownership group goes, is exactly the same. So they know what didn't work last year, and I don't think they fixed it this year. They made steps in the right direction, but it's not fixed. They have a long way to go. Make sure those things are fixed.
I definitely agree with you on all points. James, the outside man as opposed to the inside man, Rick Collins, what did you see as far as what didn't work well for the organization?
I think social media was a big one. I think on all the aspects of it. I think that some of the stuff that jumps out for me is like in a business side, you talk about something called SEO, which is your search engine optimization. You have to have a way to be that number one choice when somebody types something into Google. And it's not paying Google to put your name up there. It's putting your name out in the right places where it gets circulated enough times to where when someone types in like Dallas rugby, that the Jackals are there ahead of everybody else. It's getting your name out that way digitally, but also on other parts of the social media aspect. I mean, one of the jokes that came up in the Den earlier in the season was the lack of any graphic designs that went into anything online. I mean, the lineups and the game announcements and any of the special events, it was like it was like, look, I have a new word font. I'm just going to, with the green background and send. I mean, I think we have somebody even within the Den who was able to turn around something better in minutes of what it could be. There was no effort put in there.
I had no graphic design experience, and I feel like I got better as the year went on doing it. Thank you for your criticism, Jakl Den. Like, it got better. Well, no, it got better. That's the year. Like, my editing skills, everything, like, I had to develop those.
But that's the expectation. Like, you're not going to start out perfect.
It was a shout-out. You did good.
You're to be getting better and better. The show's getting better. The Jakl Den podcast is getting better.
But the team should have had that already to go already.
How do you hire someone as a graphic designer who doesn't know how to use anything other than PowerPoint?
Well, hey, man, you can go on Canva.com and be a relative novice and crank out pretty decent-looking things.
Yeah.
Like you said, not the same as a graphic designer, but you can do a lot of good on Canva for, what is it, $12, $15 a month?
Right.
And here's the deal too. We live in a metropolitan area that has a lot of universities. Okay. So my daughter works at a local university. They work with design students within the on-campus job she works on. And not only does she work with design students, but they've been teaching her, who is a public health major, how to do design stuff within her job. Right. So how hard is it to even try and reach out to some of these schools, try and get an intern, or just say, hey, would you like some exposure out there? That's what we're looking for. Submit us ideas. And we'll get you on social media. We'll get you on the screen during the games. How good would that look on somebody's resume? So absolutely. I think the same thing just with social media as well. Yeah. They're not tapping into the potential internships that are available here, or students who would be willing to come in and do some of this stuff and have the skills already to contribute to that, because they're able to turn around then and say, hey, look at my portfolio. I have a professional sports team that I've been doing this work for.
100% on the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think another one that killed a lot towards the end, and I heard this online as well, was this time change from 7 to 5. I mean, look, there's a good and a bad. I mean, I made this comment to Brandon when they were asking about ideas for next season. Like, I want to bring my kids to more of these games. They're at the right age to really get interested in this stuff. My kid's bedtime is 7:30. So a 7 o'clock kickoff is rough. By the time the game ends, my kids are tired. They're crying. They're screaming. They're pissed off. There's no chance of going to the after party and saying hi. Kickoff's at 5. It makes it look better. But here's the thing. We're in June.
Yeah.
In the most oppressive heat that we have ever had you change that and you put the side where the seats are at facing west. And I mean, you change that kickoff to 5, and all of a sudden we can't go on our seats because the plastic is melting. And I mean, like, it was, there was
unless you're Rick and you're crazy.
Yeah, unless you're Rick, yeah, right.
Hey, even Rick joined us in the shade for the last game. Okay, I think he learned his lesson.
That if it had just been me, I would have been out there in my seat. But somebody else requested me sit over there.
No, the person left anonymous.
Yeah.
I think there was the time change kills it too. When you are so dead set on the game is going to be at this time, even if it's a week early and you make a change, you're going to lose attendance because people who had made schedules to be there at 7 now can't do it.
There are a lot of people who work on Saturdays, and like people who have young kids, or maybe your spouse works on a Saturday. I can free up and leave at 5:45, 6, maybe once a week or every other week or every third week. I just can't do it every week. And that's not, multiple people complained about it. And I realize the Jackals have limited control over this, but the MLR also needs to look at the dynamic and say, if we're going to push an early game in Texas, let's push it in February or March.
Let's be honest. If you're going to have those early games, they should be against the teams from Chicago, New York, New England, here in early March, instead of what I went through of going up to Chicago and New England in February, early March, and excessively cold. So I think as a league, they can do better. And I think, part of that is the Jackals need to push for maybe earlier starts in, February, March, when it's a little bit colder here. And then we can go back to, 7 o'clock by the end of the season, which I think just absolutely makes sense. Is you want to give those opportunities for people with families that kids aren't going to, need to be in bed early to get to some matches that are a little bit earlier. But you also want to have plenty of matches that, aren't sitting in direct sunlight in the middle of the summer when it's incredibly hot outside. So,
but also the other teams, how did we end up being the team that had every match had to be 7 o'clock on a Saturday? I mean, how did other teams luck out with games on Fridays and Sundays?
Yeah, and I think part of that is my opinion, they're trying to get most of the matches to be Saturday night, with an occasional Sunday early afternoon start, which makes a lot of sense. Kind of follows football attendance, or not necessarily attendance, but views.
Yeah.
You have that consistency of, hey, what are you doing on Saturday nights? Well, Saturday nights at 7, I'm watching rugby, right? You're not having to go, well, is it a Friday? Is it a Sunday? Is it a Saturday this week? It's like you're saying, we know football, we know NASCAR, we know those are always Sundays, right?
That's
we know
a fair
college
point.
football is always
Less
Saturday.
But if you look at a West Coast game, a 6 p.m. kickoff there is 8 p.m. over here.
Yeah.
It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast. So there's really no reason to say, hey, Texas, you need to push your game back to 4 or 5 o'clock in the summer. That's
Oh no!
I understand that there's viewership, but
remember that not all these teams. I think we're fairly lucky, and then we didn't have matches kind of intermingling in the same stadium. I think a lot of these teams had to maybe not make changes, but have some kind of occasional Friday night and Sunday night games because they're sharing their stadiums with other teams. I mean, you look at the New York stadium; it is a high school stadium, so they're probably not sharing a lot of night games, but it's got every dang sports line you could imagine on. So they're sharing with every single one of those clubs during their season. So whenever their season is, they're not sharing with football, but maybe they're sharing with lacrosse, they're sharing with spring soccer, everything like that. So they've got to change their schedule based around that, right? I think once you start seeing more Aviva stadiums, once you start seeing more stadiums where it's a primary rugby stadium that's rented out to soccer and lacrosse and everything else, then we're going to see more consistency in start times for matches.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I will say too, with them doing that time change, I think that was a big opportunity for the Jackals organization just to have better communication. I think that was communicated very poorly to the fans. It's kind of like, we're just dictating this randomly, and there wasn't a lot of why behind it. And I think had they given that why, it would have gone a long way to appease a lot of people that were very upset, thinking this was just an arbitrary move to make us bake in the sun.
Well, but then right before the last game, the Jackals official Facebook changed their banner to kick off at 7 o'clock, where they changed it to kick off at 5 o'clock and then back kick off at 7 o'clock, and none of us knew what the hell was going on. There wasn't and even when we sent emails over to Brandon or to Josh to say, hey, what's up? The response was, oh, it's going to be 5. You've known this for weeks. Well, okay, then tell your Facebook guy that, because he's kind of confused.
I also think that we were in a unique situation as we were the only team that did have to share our stadium with a
XFL.
$60 million losing league that I really hope does not come back next year, and that would be the XFL.
Yeah.
You mean XFL, their version 3.0?
Like, they lost $60 million. We haven't heard anything from The Rock, but I'm sorry, if you lose $60 million, your investment is gone.
Could
Nobody's going to
have
invest.
bought the LA Guiltinis and just resurrected them, and we would have.
Oh my God, that would have been great.
Somebody watched Ballers and thought they make it into a real team. So
Well, it's just, once the Lions got off the field, it was so much better. It was so much better.
The Rock and Jason Momoa walking out as co-owners of a new LA rugby franchise.
Oh my God, that'd be fantastic.
Yes.
That'd be major. They can make a TV show like Wrexham.
one more can do it like a
But
I got one more, and then I'll move on. But I think the theme nights and not the jersey theme nights, not the military, not the vintage, not the city line. The stuff for the audience, I think, was good initiative, bad judgment. I think it's fantastic to have things for everyone to do. I think things like bark at the park night. No, don't bring your dog to a major league sporting event. I'm sorry.
The Rangers have that, which is why I think they wanted to bring it over here.
Yeah, and you know what? It's if you had a stadium like Aviva, it would make a lot more sense than in Globe Life. Like, I think it's just too big of a stadium. The dogs are just going to S everywhere. But if you're at Aviva, you can walk your dog out. Maybe they have a little dog
the greens
park inside the stadium. You could do something like that there in a smaller stadium. But when you have such a big stadium and they're on the concrete the entire time, I mean, it's just a lot of things where I was like, the bark of the park to me is something when you're 10 years, 15 years down the line, you have more organization and everything you could do. It was like they tried to slap things in without even thinking about whether they would work or not.
I think, honestly, the only one that they did halfway well was the 1980s night at the end of the season. That was the one that I felt like they did well at.
I'm with you that one went well and they had a lot of fun things, but I think it was probably the wrong night. I don't think that, and I mean, it matched with the vintage jerseys, but I mean, I think we could have done a costume theme night like that earlier in the season, and then for the last game of the season, like, hey, everybody wear teal, whether you're
blackout,
blackout or something.
Everybody wear something, If you don't, we're gonna hand out a bandana or something as you walked in. Like, I mean. We'll give you something to wear. Everybody wear something that is this kind of color, or try to do that, something a little more simple. I just don't know. I mean, I would have wanted to see that stuff earlier in the year, and I think at the end of the year, I would have wanted to see something come together and support. Would have meant a little more.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, a lot of their nights they had, some of their theme nights. I mean, I think they really dropped the ball. I think, we have an amazing partnership with Unchained for Veterans going on with the Jackals, with the Den, and they brought them out for the Veterans Night, and they were asking people to come out and hold the flag. And
that was they dropped the ball on that one big. That one pissed me off the first game of the season.
So last season we had a giant flag out there. We had a lot of people holding that thing, and it was a beautiful moment. And then they brought people out for this, and they had what I consider to be the world's smallest flag in Texas out on the field. And to me, it was a slap in the face for our veterans, for our partnership with Unchained for Veterans. And I think we could do better with those kind of things for sure.
Well, like, think about Hispanic Heritage Night. What did they do?
They literally just invited a bunch of, I would say, Hispanic-owned businesses to come advertise their business in the catwalk.
Yeah.
And outside of that,
and they sold their merch. The new
the merch wasn't bad. They had some good merch, but all they did was here's the T-shirt and here's some Tejano music, and it's like, what are we learning or celebrating about this culture?
Yeah, we should have had like Tejano moments posted up on the big board with maybe an interview with one of the Hispanic players saying something like, I mean, do something.
Yeah. You know what? You have a new vendor doing your concessions. Let's talk to them. Can we do a special menu for that night?
Yeah.
That would have been great. There's a lot of opportunities there that just seem like
tacos. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Which oddly could have been the same night as Bark at the Park night. No one ever would have known. Spent plenty of weekends in Tijuana eating street tacos, so no, you do not ask.
Just give them over. I don't care what it's made out of.
Hey, 3 for $1, that's fine. I'm drunk enough. It tastes good.
That's
Monty, what would you say didn't go well? I mean, we've all been interjecting the whole time, but is there anything in particular?
Well, I will say I did not appreciate sharing the field with the XFL for sure. I think that they could have made our lines, at least the border lines, darker, right?
Yes.
So we could see when they go into touch.
Was it
Because
yellow?
as it is, the XFL players are going to be standing on them on the sideline during the game. So it's not like those guys are going to get confused, right?
Yeah.
But for us, they were super light in the beginning of the season. The only way you could tell where they were was where the rhino flags were placed. And then after the XFL moved out, they darkened them. And it's like, okay, how come they weren't that dark the entire
But they moved the flags back, which technically is where they're supposed to be, is like kind of 3 to 5 meters off the line. But then it made it more confusing because the lines were so close. Couldn't tell. Did they go into? I don't know. They go into touch. Nobody knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they had soccer lines on the game. At the end of the season, they had soccer
after the XFL
lines
left, we got soccer lines. So that was great. I think another thing I'd like to see some improvement on with them is just from the perspective of where we're sitting and then having those last 2 games going into the shade behind the old bullpen behind the uprights. It's just that ability to see when there is a kick through the uprights, if it goes through or not. There are crow's nests up above those uprights where they could place a camera and get up onto the big screen. So we're getting conversion kicks. We can actually see if they go through because our angle is pretty trash.
Yeah.
So you're kind of just looking not at the kick so much as the refs on the field, see if their flags.
Hey, sometimes they would run out after the kick had gone through, touched the ground.
Yeah.
And they didn't raise their, and then all of a sudden they raised their flags like 3 seconds later. It's like, well,
yeah,
you gotta call it. Did it go through? Did it not go through?
One flag goes up, the other doesn't, and everybody screams "Hooray, hooray!" And it's like, wait a minute, what? No, what happened?
Exactly. So I'd love to see that. I think the other thing that didn't go well was just the season ticket holder experience at the beginning. So when this season started, they posted a lot of benefits for the season ticket holders online, and really none of those benefits came through. Right? It was, we're going to have guaranteed promotional items. There were no promotional items throughout the season. We're going to have open practices for you. None of that really happened. We're going to have team meet and greets and autograph sessions. Now, did that happen? Kind of. Okay. And the reason why I say kind of is I think the one big benefit of being a season ticket holder, other than the discount on tickets, was that kit reveal this year. I think the kit reveal was top notch. I think that's something they need to continue with. I think it was a great way for them to get the season ticket holders in, get us excited for the season, get us to meet some of the new players, some of the new administration. That was amazing. I got my ball signed by a lot of people, got a lot of great pictures. That night, Danny Christensen actually came up and introduced himself to me, which was great. An instant fan of him because he's just very interesting to talk to and a great guy. And I love seeing him get on the field as a starter those last 2 games. But there was a lot of expectations made for what we were going to get. They never materialized. The other problem they had was last season, they kind of had a grid breakdown. They said, look, if you're a founder, this is what you get. If you're a VIP, this is what you get. If you're a regular season ticket holder, this is what you get. We didn't get any of that. So it was kind of like, hey, look, if you're a season ticket holder, you get all this, and it was just very confusing. So I think there's a big opportunity for them to improve there. I think, too, I would love to see them go to a model much like the other sports teams where when you order your season tickets, they're going to mail you something in the mail. It's going to have some information on the team. It's going to have some goodies for you in it, whether it's just a sticker, whether it's whatever. It's going to have your schedule, all that kind of stuff that you can, look at, be excited for the season, maybe put up in your window, put up on your car and advertise the team a little bit. But I think definitely that's a big area of improvement for them is what is us as season ticket holders, what are we getting for our money, and how are they doing stuff with us? And throughout the season, it got better. Having our own season ticket holder reps was great. Yeah, they did look a lot of good stuff there too, and I know they're working on a lot of things for next season ticket wise, and I'm very excited to see what they come out with. Just make it more accessible for everybody. From the regular fan that's just going to buy a ticket here or there, to a season ticket holder, or even going over. I know we've talked about this a little bit. Multi-game packages. Where you're not committing for the whole season, but maybe you're doing a half season or something like that. You're getting a little discount on it, but you're committing to, hey, I'm going to be at this many games because that's what I can commit to.
Yeah, I think that's a great shout out. They need to do like maybe 3-4 game packages, and not everybody's willing to commit to 8 games and parking for 8 games, and sometimes just the time. If you can pick 4 games, that's great. You come out, and maybe an option for like access to the lounge with those 4 tickets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Enhanced experience. They should be flexible there.
Honestly, the lounge was never that busy until the very last match of the season. And they can plan for last match of the season, having another bartender up there, which they desperately needed. But honestly, most of the matches, when you went up there after the match, there weren't that many people up there. It was pretty easy to handle. I don't see why they couldn't, provide that as a benefit for anybody who's going to buy like a 4 ticket package or something like that.
And the other thing is what's going to happen. People are going to go up there. They're most likely going to buy a drink. They're going to make more revenue.
Revenue.
Get us some decent beer up there, for the love of all that is holy.
Hey, I am still saying I want Guinness. We need it downstairs at the bar. We need it upstairs at the bar.
Something that isn't Bud Light, Coors Light, Michelob Ultra.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, and we talked about this with the partnerships, with the local rugby clubs too, is we saw that partnership with True Vine, and it seemed like this year they didn't even hardly know it existed or what to do.
And they said that it still existed. I couldn't believe it when Todd told us
they didn't have True Vine stocked at all up there.
Relationship, and I thought I didn't see one thing about True Vine the entire season.
Yeah,
I thought it was over.
Yeah,
pickle juice was all over the place. That was the important one this season.
No, I don't really like pickles, so
I have no idea why that was.
I don't know if you guys recall
I know why
swag when we got our tickets. We never got any of that this year. That was another disappointment for me.
Yeah.
One thing you mentioned the tickets, Monty, and it's like my last company, we had season tickets to the Cowboys every year. We would take clients to the Cowboys. And one of the coolest parts about that was when you would go as a ticket holder, like they gave you tickets.
Physical tickets,
You never tear them. I mean, like you go in, like you had the digital, like, hey, scan this to get in. But I mean, you've got some pretty cool memorabilia. Like there's your swag, that I've got.
Even this year, going over to the digital journal for the games, that's great and all. But I still have every program from last season.
Yes,
not do I have every program, but my daughter was lucky enough to win at the last game the entire series of programs that were signed by the player on the cover.
Awesome.
So I have those as well, but having those as collectibles, having those to look back at for the past season, I think those are amazing. Plus, something you can keep. It has their marketing partners in there. They're able to go back and look on and say, hey, these people were supporting the team. So I think having those physical things is vitally important for fans. And I will say this. I love the fact that as the Jakl Den, as we do have season ticket holders, I love the fact that when people are not able to make the games, we're getting online and we're giving those away to other people to make sure more people can see it. And I think that's a great community that we have, that people are willing to go, hey, look, I'm not going to use this. I don't want anything for it. I just want somebody to use it.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah, and I would like to make that easier for people to do. One of the things that we need to, as a Jakl Den group, do better is get the website set up so it's more functional.
Yes.
It's more useful. One of the things I wanted, 2 things for that quickly is ticket exchange. So it's an easy communication piece for people. Like they don't have to get on Facebook Messenger and worry about it there. They can all do it. They can do it through the website really easily. The other thing is sign up for travel. So I really want to get more people traveling to away matches, and obviously if we can get a New Orleans away match and a Houston away match on a fairly regular basis, those would be fun ones and easy ones for a lot of people to do. But getting hotels and travel and tickets and things like that, I mean, that is an easy thing. People sign up through the website. We give them all the information to go purchase, and then that's all done really easily for the fan group. Are two things that I'd love to do.
And I think too that we can do a lot of the legwork for that once we get that up and going, as the board is setting up and getting those connections through the Jackals to the ticket side on the away match side to set up a group ticket discount and start working with some of these hotels that are in the area. Talk to that team and say, hey, what are good hotels in that area? How do we get a group rate so that we can kind of put that out there and then travel as a team? Because I think Houston, I think NOLA travels well to Dallas.
Oh man, yes, they do.
And we need to be up there in those stands making a lot of noise for our boys instead of just a small handful, and if we can get it set up where we can all sit in the same area, we're all together, it's going to be a very powerful statement for our guys to see in the stands.
I don't think it's a hard thing to do. In fact, I've been sort of doing this, but I'm very selfishly doing it for matches that I've been interested in going to. But it shouldn't be that hard. And one of the things I want to do is get it to more of an automated place. But I think we were talking about kind of these opportunities for these collectibles, right? So tickets that you might keep, get autographed. I have my Carlo Denison signed jersey with a ticket from a mat, and I also have a signed program from him. Like, they just did away with the physical programs, and I get like it's cheaper and you can put more into a virtual program, but when you're trying to grow the sport and get people interested, that physical program that you can touch and feel and maybe get it autographed by a player is very important early on.
Or even stupid stuff like a magnetic schedule. Like if you go to my office, there's the magnetic schedule from last year, and right next to it was a blank spot where this one was going to go, and then that one would go. And I had to print my own out, which was inaccurate. So even those little bitty things, the towels, which were a big hit last year, those little things make a huge difference to what's going on with your fan experience.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Those towels. I mean, like, I probably have 6 or 8 of them, and the number of times it was like they're on my golf bag, they're in my gym bag, like there's one in the car. And it's like it becomes after a little while like this is the handout thing. Like, hey, here you go, use this. Here, go ahead and use this to do whatever. And all of a sudden, like, I'm advertising. I'm
absolutely
with that. You know what I mean? Like, oh, hey, what's that? Who are these guys? It's that. It's that search engine optimization.
It's free press for them.
And they won. They won at that one time this year, and it's sitting right up behind James's shoulder right there. That was the best handout we got this year, and I thought it was an amazing handout for them to have, and they could have done more of that. I still got mine here, and it went up in my front window for a long time after that game. So
the one question I had for the girl handing these out, and the one big joke, and somebody else asked me this too, where I said, did you print these for every single game? They had to have, right? Like, you had no idea.
No,
they were ready. The second that 3 whistle blow went, they were ready to hand these out. And it was like, you have a stack of these for every single game downstairs, don't you?
It's just like, in some country, there's a bunch of people running around with hats on for the Super Bowl champions that did not win it that year.
Or NBA champions. In
November, every 4 years, Time Magazine prints 2 covers of whoever won the presidency, and they have to wait to see who actually wins it to pitch that one to, like,
So I wonder how many kids are running around in Africa with Dallas Cowboys 2023 Super Bowl champ shirts right now. I don't know. Yeah.
If they had electricity, they wouldn't know what they were wearing.
Shame on you.
So we were able to answer a lot in that question, actually.
I got more, dude. I got more.
You got some more? Let's go, Michael. Let's see what you got.
This number one with the bullet for me is the color has to get right.
Oh, Jesus.
If you go to the merch stand, and I counted. So forget the merch stand. You go online, there's 6 different colors. You can't see that. 6 different colors of teal or green. And it's like, it's schizophrenic. Like, I want to buy gear or make gear. Get you one of these. Call Rick. Remember the commercial. But fans want to rep their team, right?
Yeah.
And when you show up, you want official merchandise that reps that team. And if you go look at the fans, and I'm not talking about our own homemade stuff, but official Dallas Jackals merch, it's all over the place.
It is.
It's like 50 shades of teal up in the stands, and so it's terrible, and it's overpriced.
And you got
there's
your
a pair
jersey
of,
from DH Gate.
yeah. So like, there's a pair of shorts I saw, and I was like, those are amazing. I want those, and then it was like $55.
Right.
You might get 35 out of me, and I'm not that cheap, but like the colors off. I want to piggyback on the social media thing. So rugby would grow so much more if the fans felt like they knew the players. That social media piece, the fans need to know who they're cheering for. They're not out there wearing helmets. They're not out there covered up in big uniforms. They're wearing spandex, and that's it. There's no reason why that social media field shouldn't be filled with player profiles or behind the scenes short takes on TikTok and Instagram. Like, we should be able to put a face to a name other than just a weird, terribly designed graphic design during the game. It should be saturated in that. And here's why that's such a big deal. I've had innumerable conversations with people from all over the globe that say, if MLR can get players, not just a little bit better pay, but have some real opportunity to make some money from endorsements, players will be lined up to come here because they can establish a life for themselves where your kids are going to McKinney ISD schools, where you have the opportunity to build your own brand. Well, if the team is not helping the players build their own brand by giving them some face recognition, we're doing them a disservice. Really? And it's doing a disservice to the fans because unlike American sports, those numbers change all the time. Like my kids in the other room, they sometimes play lock. Sometimes they play inside center. Sometimes they play everything in the middle. You can't say so-and-so's number 23. And so we need to know when we see a face, when we hear a name, be able to put those things together for our benefit to cheer, but also for the benefit of the players to create them opportunities. And last, and probably least, but I still get fired up about, is we miss so many opportunities to celebrate very specific Texas things. We had a game, a day or two away from Juneteenth.
Yeah.
We have Cinco de Mayo. We have Texas Independence Day. We have all sorts of Texas-specific, meaningful cultural events that happen during the rugby season, and we got bark at the park.
Exactly.
So, or like another pet peeve for me in terms of scheduling is, so every year, if you in the youth environment in Texas, College Station, Texas A&M Rugby Club hosts a year-end tournament, and it's kind of the curtain call for little kids rugby. There's some high school that the championships for high school are about usually the week after. But man, that's it. Like that's the closing day for all of us. It's super important. It's the best time the kids have. And Jakl's youth night was the same night, was the same day that the big youth tournament's going on. And so it's like those little things have to be ironed out. We have to, whether it's them being able to access schedules, or us just being more vocal about things. We have to get on the same page.
I think what we can do is we can force it down their throat. Like we can put a Word document together. These are opportunities that you missed last season that we think you should address this season.
Yeah.
It's the end of the season. You have 6 months, and before the season starts, go ahead and make sure that you make these a focal point going forward. Like these opportunities, and if they want to take them,
we're also the
growth
ticket holders that they count on, right, for those sales, butts and seats. And I'm sorry, but if the organization, especially, and this is no hate at the players or the sports side, but if they can't get their S together, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure it's worth putting down the amount of money that it costs for a full season of high level season ticket holder seats. So there's so many things that have to be put in place for us to say, yeah, this is worth it, because we've got everything else. A lot of us got kids. A lot of us have everything else going on, and I love going out there to the stadium, but man, I mean, you've got to put product on the field, but you've also got to give us as season ticket holders some value.
Yeah.
It's a good point. I mean, it's one thing.
Value to be had.
No,
It's one
absolutely.
thing. Our tickets are, it's a couple $100 for where our seats are at. But you look at the VIP and the founders area and the amount those guys are spending on that. And really, I mean, if they even get, if they got more benefits information than we did, which we didn't get anything, maybe they knew some things that we didn't. But I mean, what are they really getting their value?
Yeah. And one of the things, I got to go hear Mark Cuban speak years ago talking about the Mavericks. And something he keyed in on was the fact that one of the things that brings people to an event like this is the entertainment value. And he's not talking about what's going on the field. He's not talking about what's going on the court. He said he wanted to make it entertaining for the fans from the moment they stepped into that stadium to the moment they left that stadium, right? So what is happening throughout that event, regardless of what's going on the court, what is happening throughout that event that makes you want to be there in the arena watching the Mavericks play, right? We have to have the same mentality with the Jackals. What makes you want to spend the money to drive out to go see this game live in person compared to seeing it free on MLR, right? Or the Rugby Network. So we have to have that kind of entertainment value. We have to have that kind of value from the moment we step into Choctaw to the moment we leave, I think. And, just like Mike was saying, getting to know the players is very important. And last season, we allowed them on the concourse. We got to meet them. We got to get stuff signed. We got pictures with them. And this season, we got that once during the rain.
The rain,
Yeah.
Well, and essentially what we're all talking about
more so that we can have the kids meet them, get excited about meeting professional players and giving us the opportunity to talk to them a little bit and meet them. Even if, we're the just regular ticket fan that can't go up to the Jack Daniels Club, let's get them on the concourse when they're not suited up and let's, meet them. If they don't speak English well, let's have an interpreter there. I'm more than fine with that. Same thing with interviews. If they don't speak English well, let me get an interpreter on there and at least I get to hear their point of view and get to know them a little better.
Yep.
Well, remember last year, the end of the games last year, half the team came up into the stands to say hi to people. Yeah. And I feel like this year was almost like, I don't know if they weren't allowed. It seemed like they weren't allowed to. They made their one pass and they had to go back over towards. But I mean, like the picture that is all over my family's social media and the way that my kids fell in love with Tucci so much was like my daughter ran up and the last game and just like bear hugged one leg was all she can get around that guy. And Tucci's parents were in town for it. His mom got a picture of my daughter grabbing a hold of his leg, and it was on Tucci's Instagram and Jakal's Instagram picked it up and I mean, you don't have that kind of interaction. You're right, unless you can get up into that area at night, but you don't have it like you did last year.
Yeah. Except for Aaron Gray. Aaron is an amazing guy, and I love the fact that Aaron is constantly sitting in the fan stands with us and being part of the group. And, I've talked to him about it. He's like, I just love the energy being with the fans over there when I'm not able to be on the field. So, he's one of the most approachable players I think we have, and him and his family are just amazing people. And I think we're very blessed to have him on the team.
Absolutely.
To put a pin in everything we've talked about, what we've all talked about is branding. What does the Jackal brand mean to the fans and to the players in the community? And right now it's a little bit all over the map. Like if you got to change colors to make it work, go with the Maverick green, whatever that's called. Right. Go with baby blue and just embrace Argentina. But the branding is not established. The culture is not established. And until those things get right, you're going to have a real hard time converting new fans.
Yeah. I think ultimately when it comes to front office, maybe you're nailing the head right there is they need to get a brand manager in place. That person's going to take care of, what is our color scheme? What is our brand out in the public?
Right. What do we mean to the community?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I think this is going to tail into probably the next question here, but one of the things that I think a lot about is what can the team be doing in the off season to help bring about the connection that the city has to the players. And I mean, like, this is that time when they're not either training or playing every day. When they're on the season, it's like you can't really get them out of they're either training or they're playing, so you can't get them out to do a whole lot of stuff. But in that off season, like, this is where they could be doing the appearances or the the outreach stuff, the community stuff. I mean, they have the academy. Last year they had a youth league. Hopefully that comes back this season. But why could we not do scrimmages or exhibitions against some of the other local teams? I mean, God, let's do a preseason. Mm-hmm. Do 1 or 2 preseason games where season ticket holders are allowed to come watch. Like, have it at Rugby Park or at one of the other areas, have the Jackals against the Reds or Jackals against the Harlequins, something like that.
I agree completely. Yeah.
And I love the heck out of the friendly game we have against New Orleans. Yeah, New Orleans was a great preseason event. You know, it was different than any other rugby I think we've ever seen, but it was very enjoyable to see how those teams were ironing things out and having us be able to have access to that.
Yeah.
I think the issue, though, with all of that is that, half of this team isn't even in the country right now.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's a really
these aren't full-time jobs. They get 6-month contracts, and then they've got to go back. You had Tincho Elias and Milano suit up for Rosario this weekend down in Argentina. They're already back playing for their clubs in their home country. We do have a few. Aaron Gray lives here. Pablo Zeiss is still here. I don't know when he's going home. Baravali's gone already. Jalen Tatum, who's no longer technically on the roster, he stays local. And that's really about it. It's not like with the Mavericks or the Stars. Well, the Stars, half those guys go home too, but everybody seems to stay local. And I think that's the difference with the sport. You can't promote year round because these guys aren't here.
But once they come back and they assemble, so once the squad is picked, I think they'll come back around, October, November?
I think the problem is that sometimes they're just coming back in December. Part of the problem of having so many internationals that have to.
That is the problem. Yeah.
I don't think Boyson's going to be back in October because he's going to have just played in the World Cup.
Yeah, so he's going to be in the World Cup. He's going to be done.
Yeah, I mean, well,
if he comes back, maybe December, January, because he can slot right back in.
And I think they live. I think him and his wife, they live here, but that's it. It's not. You never know.
Do a sevens game. I guarantee we can get enough guys playing for something small like that. You know what I mean? But have something. You talk about the connection. I mean, have something.
Yeah.
Where so it's not build that connection, build that brand, make it so we got to have a reason. If this continues to where 2-0 is our or 2 and
2-14,
2 wins,
2-14
is kind of is our status quo. There's got to be a reason to continue supporting this, and if it's not going to be the victories, it needs to be support for the heart of the team, and we've got to be able to build that up somehow.
Great
connection.
Yep.
So, as he had already gone into the next question, obviously, what did you want to see in the off season? We will go to Michael King with that one first. Michael, what would you like to see in the off season?
I will go all the way back to one of my initial talking points. We need to see more local, whether that be American or Canadian eligible players. Cam Dodson came available, we passed. Lauta came available, we passed. We had some great talent come up in the expansion draft that would be USA eligible, and they fell through. And so we have to bolster, like you gentlemen mentioned, that fly half, inside center, outside center, major bolstering is needed, and I'd love for it to come from USA or Canadian eligible players.
What about you, Mr. Kabui? What would be what do you want to see in the off season here?
I think a huge question, if I'm an American player or American or Canadian based player, is if I come to the Jackals, am I going to get a legitimate chance to play? I'm just being devil's advocate here.
You're telling the truth.
That if I'm a local born player, my first concern is, am I going to get an equal fair chance to pull on that starting jersey, right? And so with that, number 10, I think we need 3 backline players and 2 solid pack players. And like you said, go get some experienced people who are looking to finish out the last part of their career, but are still in good shape, still in decent shape. And I think you add 3 or 4 vets to this side. This is a 500 plus win team immediately.
Absolutely.
Keep the core of what you have. So,
Yep.
Mr. Bradley, Monty, what would you like to see?
I would like to see some transparency and some communication. At this point, we know that Gall is coming back, right? Who else do we have coming back? So as we're moving forward,
Matt Gordon is re-signed.
Matt Gordon. Okay, so just that communication with us, the fans, right? When we're re-signing players, making sure we're knowing that's happening, and when we're re-signing players or we're bringing new players in, just communicating with us who they are, what they're about. We got a couple of players this last season that people are like, I've never heard of them before. There's not a lot on social media about them. There's not a lot of tape on them. So just introducing them to us, I think that's a great way as we move through this off season to keep us engaged.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Mr. James already gave his answer, so we will go to the inside man. No relation to Phil Collins or Rick Collins.
Second cousin.
Twice removed.
Cousin from a different.
Twice removed.
Other.
You're English, man. Admit it.
That's an asterisk quote.
Right.
If you know what asterisk is.
Man, that takes me there. I need to go back. I've not seen that movie. I think that one, I like Monty's perspective on transparency. We've got to see more transparency from the business side. I want to see them, give us regular updates during the off season. What players are doing? Where are they? Quotes from them on their experience here. Getting more action. We're out looking for players. We're having combines. We're having camps. Like just all those things to just keep them, keep the buzz going. And I think part of that is especially focus on what's been mentioned before, which is the personality, the players, allowing us to connect to them, and then adding, as already has been suggested, American and Canadian potential international players. I don't hate the idea of bringing in younger American Canadians, but I, in my opinion, and it's already been fleshed out to some degree here, is to bring in some experienced players who may be on, maybe not last legs, but very close to. I bring up Paul Lasike because Utah is getting very crowded in the midfield, and he may be available. I mean, he's coming. He's going to be coming off of surgery, but he's looking to play some more. So you bring in a Paul Lasike at 12 or something like that. God, I don't know what our offense looks like with that. I mean, it could be very different with somebody who can be a bull in the midfield, which I don't necessarily think we had anywhere on our team. So I'd love to see that. And I want to see them saying we are making a huge effort to connect with the rugby community. Not just we're going to have this one meeting in March, April, and then everything's good. No, we need regular meetings with the local community coaches and admins, bringing in players to help coach, maybe some 7-sides this summer, bringing in some of the coaches who are sticking around, if any of them stick around, to help out with different things this summer. So they just need to get out and about more, make themselves more available, and like was said, transparency, and then bringing in some experience for next year. Again, if they brought in some very good young players who have a huge opportunity for growth and become American international players, I have a hard time disagreeing with that. But I would love to see them sign 2-3 American/Canadian experienced players who come in and immediately make an impact for next season. And maybe selfishly for us, we want to see that because we think they'll be much better with that. But I know that there is a long game here.
I had made a post on my other blog about the popularity of players on this team this year. And if you look at the consensus most popular guys on this team, they're not guys with international caps. The most popular amongst the fans are guys like Alex Tucci and guys like Danny Christensen. Neither of them are international stars of the sport, but both very good rugby players.
Yeah.
And I hope that if that's the route we decide to go, cool. I'd love to bring in some blue collar working class guys that can play the game. But in the same respects, I'm kind of like everyone else. I wouldn't, man, if Paul Lasike wanted to come here, you're darn tootin', bring him here. He used to play in the NFL. I mean, like, that's a marketing piece alone right there. But I also wouldn't be against bringing over somebody. I mean, look at what San Diego has built around Ma'anonu. He's 40 freaking years old.
And he still looks better than most of the players.
And he still looks better than most players, but it's like, yeah, like if that's what we've got to do, then that's what we've got to do. That's my hope for the offseason is why we need to sign a big name. We need to go out and sign a big name.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is. I don't know who would be interested in coming here. I'm pretty sure, you know, like if he's not playing, I mean, I'd take Augustine Creevy to come here, you know, like, yeah, he's 38, 39 years old.
He's available.
You know, like, why are we not? If you're wanting to sign a big international star, if you want him to be Argentine, go sign Creevy. They signed Kubila in Miami already. That was their first signee. Yeah. Why are we not signing any big names? I had done this breakdown earlier in the season where I looked at we are the team with the least international caps, and we're like last place by about 40 caps.
Yeah.
Like, we have no international stars on our team. But this was also the first year where I noticed that the best teams in this league, they were loaded with USA Eagles.
Oh, 100%.
Like,
look at San Diego. Look at Utah. Look at Houston. Some of those West Coast powerhouses.
The team that had the 40 All Blacks caps, that was the best team. It was the guys that were loaded with USA Eagles. And, like, we have none right now. We have, in my personal belief, one definite. That's Sam Gola.
100%.
Tidwell possibly. And I could possibly see Robinson at some point, but he's got to get more playing time.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, we had one last year. We had Chad London who had what? Maybe a dozen, 13 caps, maybe something like that.
And he was at the end of his career. He just came back to help us out.
Yeah, and I mean, like that's my hope in the offseason is that we go out and if we don't sign some big USA Eagle, go out and find a hot dog from somewhere else that's at the end of their career. Tell them, hey, you'll come here, you'll get paid $500 a week. You don't got to pay for rent, and you get to live in America.
Yeah, and the other thing too is now we have a better product on the field. We're not the mess we were last season. People are going to want to come here, I hope, because, you know, Texas has a great cost of living. So what you're making as an MLR player here is going to go a lot further than in some of the other markets. You have a team that's coming together. You have a good coaching staff in place. So hopefully we're able to start drawing some of those names a lot easier than it would have been to get them in the beginning of this year.
Oh, absolutely.
After what last year was. So I think there's going to be a lot more interest in our team, hopefully, and hopefully they're able to leverage that.
So that comes to the very last question of this whole podcast here today. And it's kind of a hypothetical thing. It's what maybe we hope. But what is your dream? What is the big thing that you hope happens here to this organization? Like what is it, that one thing? And we will start off backwards. We will start off with Michael King. What is the big thing that you wish would happen?
I'll jump in because I got to run.
Yeah, take it to Kenyon Thor.
Yeah. I'm just looking for some cohesion, transparency. I want to see them get together early. The big thing is we can't keep on trying to throw a team together in December, January, and thinking they're going to do something. It's impossible. So I'm hoping to see them assemble in November, which means early picks pulled in, have a good camp, good preseason, 3 or 4 solid preseason games, and let's go get a 500-plus season. That's what I'm looking for. And boys, good being with you, and I got to run.
Cheers, Kaveh.
Thanks,
Guys.
Louis.
So to
Mike
me,
King, what's the dream?
I think the biggest piece of the puzzle that's missing is we need a stadium that is going to work with growth. There's still plenty of land in the Metroplex. You can go north, you can go west, you go east. There's chunks of land everywhere. For the Jackals to become successful, we need a Sabercat Stadium. We need a place that can become the heartbeat of the DFW rugby community, that can legitimately host tournaments, that can legitimately host big men's matches, that can legitimately do all the things that are necessary to grow not just the professional team, but to drag the rest of us along with it. I know that there is something wonderful about being in that big open stadium, and I've heard lots of players talk about how great the facilities are, but we could have 5,000-6,000 people in there and feel like nothing. Whereas if you get into a stadium, again, I think Sabercat or Viva is the best example of it. Man, if you've been to a game there, it is a completely different experience. And they're being able to build huge inroads into their little rugby community in Houston. And so my big dream would be find a chunk of land somewhere that's as central as possible, that's off expressways, and give us a stadium that can be expanded in the future, that sits maybe 8,000 people right now, but can be expanded to 10 or 15, that has practice fields, that has facilities, where real deal camps can start kicking off, where we can build a real culture around the club.
What about you, Monty? What would be your dream for this organization, this team?
I agree with Mike. I think having our own stadium. I love Choctaw. I think it's in the heart of the sports complex for Dallas, for DFW. It's a great location, but I think other fields do it better. They have shade. You're closer to the field. They have dedicated facilities, right? I think that's part of it. I think the other thing I would like to see, my dream, is just them being, I think transparency is a big thing for me, right? Communicating with us when there's injuries, what's going on. I've seen guys carted off the field this season, and we don't see it for weeks, and we never hear what's going on. If you look at other sports, they have insiders. They're doing injury reports. They're doing all kinds of things, and we're and I think that's overall in the MLR in general.
Yes.
Is they expect the coverage to be like other sports and don't realize that they need to do that legwork. And once they do the legwork, the insiders will pick up that ball and carry it for them. But we're at that point now where we need to get those people that have that inside access to the players. They're communicating with us, who they're looking at, what's going on when we see injuries, when we see guys that are on and off the field. I think the other thing I'm hoping for is another killer draft this season. We got that first round draft pick. We got Gola, absolute gold. I think every game he has played since the moment he has touched the field, he's proved why he's the number one draft pick. And I'm not saying we're going to get number one next year, but I hope we get a really good draft this year. I think Santi did a great job with that. And I'm looking for another solid draft here for the 2024 season.
Definitely. What about you, James? What is your dream for the Jackals?
I think it's the easy answer to it is, I want us to hit the ground next season just swinging and dominating, and I want to see us, I want to see us win every match. But it's kind of like how do we get there? Is it getting the right names from the draft? Is it getting the coaches to figure out the cohesion on the field? Is it getting all the things that we talked about today of what's not working and how to address them? I want the fine tuning of the players to really become to take precedence. They can start working with each other when they're on that pitch, and you can really start seeing the line hold better. You can start seeing the lineouts work. You can start seeing all those little things here and there to give us the points that we need. And I really think it's going to go back to, I think it falls on that coaches and the staff shoulders to piece all that together. And whether it's a stronger preseason or I don't know. Some you mentioned, I mean, half the players aren't even in the country anymore. So how do you get ready for the season? How do you whatever they've got to do in the off season to kind of collectively get on the same page? That's what I want to see.
Definitely. And last but not least, I have to bring this up. Rick, you did what I did in season 1. You traveled abroad. You went to a lot of the away matches just like I did. We bring up Houston Stadium a lot. I just want to say thank you once again, and I don't mean to bring this up, but I always do. I obviously got engaged at that game this year. You were there with me, Rick. You and Kat, especially you Kat, and my fiance have found a drinking partner. But I want to hear your answer, because I feel like me and you kind of have been on the same wavelength about kind of this whole supporting this whole thing from the bottom up. Not to say that everybody else hasn't as well, but what is your hope, Rick? What is your big dream for this side?
Yeah, I think on the field, as everybody's mentioned, keeping this group together, the hardest part was seeing an entirely new squad, right? We had like 3 players from the previous season still on the squad this year. And obviously that really hurts in terms of team building and in terms of determining what the culture of the team is going to be, and also just play on the field. It took years for me to get used to the same back line playing with the Quins before we really were really dominant on the field. Just because you get used to, where guys are going to run to, which way they like to pass and what their tendencies are and things like that. And it just takes time on the field. And our guys haven't really had that. We saw it getting better towards the end of the season with this side this year. I would love to see them bring in at least 2 experienced players. I mean, Pablo Matera might be out there available, and Nick Phipps is definitely out there available currently. Guys like that, bring them in. Phipps is 34 maybe, but still plenty of spring in his legs. And Matera is, I think, only like 29, and just the attitude he brings, and he's Argentinian. That seems like and like you mentioned, Creevy earlier, like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't we want to bring him in and try and pick, some of the guys that don't get pulled to other Premiership teams from London Irish, who just sort of fell apart. But there's plenty of players out there. It's just a matter of getting them in early and getting them, to be a part of the side and part of the community. And I think you bring in those big names, it does create an opportunity for advertising. One of the things Paul Lasike can be is a marketing opportunity, despite his play on the field of just, showing him in a Chicago Bears uniform. I mean, that connects with everybody. Football connects with Texas. So there's opportunities there on the field, but I think off the field, more transparency. Yes, it's gotten better. We still need more transparency. And then getting the players more connected in the community. And like everybody said, yeah, when they're going back home, that's really difficult. But while they're at home, have them post pictures on social media of them and their family and their friends in Jackals gear, right? Send them Jackals gear to give out to their buddy at Rosario or wherever else. Have them, wear it on the at matches down there, whatever. It doesn't matter. They throw on a cap at the end of a match. Like, all that does is help. They've got to do a better job in there. So I think if they can put together a decent social media program for the off season, that could be huge in getting eyeballs, and then creating those relationships we talked about. We want an official watch party place, right? It's been in the work. That needs to happen this off season. They need to get their branding into places where fans are going to be coming in. Other sports fans are going to be coming in and seeing it and wondering, what is this? And especially sports fans that are willing to come in at 8 a.m. in the morning and watch a match, right? Soccer fans could be a potential area to grab some fan base from. I mean, we already have a few FC Dallas fans in the group as it is. And then also getting out in the community and just especially youth, So getting out, doing more of the camps like they did last season, but it's got to be more. They got to be better organized, and they need players and coaches there that are going to be just hammering the Jackals branding into them.
Yep.
Great answers from all you guys. And I'll add my little 2 cents to the end of this. Obviously, I'd love to sign a big USA Eagle and a big foreign guy. The transparency, all these things are great. But I guess more than anything is that, a year ago, I wasn't really a part of this. I was a member, but not really an active guy. And the family and the community I found amongst the Jakl Den, I want to see that continue to grow. You guys, you saw what was going on in my personal life, and you guys have kind of just become like a little surrogate family around each other. Like, we talk about problems and stuff like that. And I kind of wish people could see that community. And I feel like, well, that's kind of our job as the Jakl Den to kind of promote that a bit too. Yep. And I think we do a good job. The photo I posted today with Monty and his wife and the kids, that was really what it was all about. I want people to kind of see that. And I'm hoping that's my dream, is that people see what a community this sport provides. It's not it's not like the football community. It's not like the soccer community. It's not like a basketball. It's not like a hockey community, because every one of us comes from a different background. Mm-hmm. Like, we all come, all 5 of us, and that's my dream, is for people to see that and to automatically just gravitate towards this game and this team. And I think we're working towards that as us as a fan club. We are working towards that, as bringing people kind of into the fold. And that's my dream. It's just to hope to see it to continue. We all saw what Seattle's fan club is, and I want them to look at us and envy at one point. And I think it's an uphill climb, but I think we can do it.
Yeah, and I think, too, with me and Elle, that's one of the reasons why we want to become season ticket holders, is we're looking for that community, right? I love rugby. She once supported me in it, and she fell in love with rugby. And one of the things that really struck her in this sport is just what the community of rugby looks like, right? Yeah. The fact that we tailgate and we get guys and gals, they're fans of the other team that show up at those tailgates, and we all become friends with them, right? Like, I talk to Matt from Seattle all the time, and see what he's doing and stuff like that. And I know we got an open invitation to go up there and watch, the Jackals play the Seawolves anytime. And also, just taking her to the post-game match and her being like, wait, both teams come together and eat dinner together? And I'm like, yeah, that's part of what rugby is its community. And this community here, I think, with the Jackals Den has been great, Keith. I agree with you.
Well, I think that made a good, 2 hours, guys. One here, man.
What happens when you get a bunch of rugby freaks around the microphone?
Right.
Well, just fans in general, and that's what I was hoping was going to happen with this, and it definitely did happen. Once again, guys, buy the scarves, follow the advertisement with Mr. Rick Collins. No relation to Phil Collins. Maybe he is. I've been seeing rumors online. Somebody posted a photo of him and Phil. They both had beards. I mean, it was like, I don't know, man. I don't know
idea who that was.
Means, but yeah, this was a great one, guys, and we'll definitely have a few more of these during the off season with the draft coming and everything else. Any type of team information that comes along, you'll definitely. So stay tuned. We will always come with you for the information, and we hope everybody enjoys their off season with your family. We hope to see you out at Choctaw again next season, because that's what really, without us, this doesn't exist. And I always say at the end of these videos, this is by the fans, for the fans, and this truly is by the fans. All of us are fans, and it's for you guys, the fans. Yep. So I will say cheers to everybody, and we will end this broadcast with a thumbs up, guys. Cheers, guys.
Cheers,
guys.